on YouTube. I'm looking at the entertaining thermometer bar. Maybe we can have a sing-along while we wait. I want to be in the Zoom where it happens. Zoom where it happens. I can't believe I didn't think of that joke until today. Oh, this is setting up. It's going, it's going, it's going, it's going. Oh, you know what? It'll either go or not. Let's just begin. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening for our meeting of the Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club. I am Mitch Wagner. I'm the board member for communications and social media. We have a lot of ground to cover and some great speakers to hear from, so I want to get started right away. We will have an opportunities for Q&A. Send a private message to me on the chat channel or click the raise hand button on your Zoom controls or just get my attention any way you can if you have questions. As before, we are streaming this live on our YouTube channel, if it worked. So if you have friends or family who can't make it tonight on Zoom or you experience technical difficulties and have to leave us, you can watch on our YouTube channel. Just search for La Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club on YouTube. If you have anything you need to bring to my attention or you notice any technical problems or anybody disrupting the meeting or acting out, please message either of my two board colleagues, Evelyn Andrade and Katie Seghetti, or myself, and I have probably butchered the pronunciation of their names again. So let's get going. Let's start this meeting by hearing from Club President Tina Reinberg. Tina, I'm going to unmute you now as soon as I find you on the list. Okay, Tina, you are now free to unmute yourself, I think. There you are.
Welcome everybody, like Mitch said, to our club meeting. We're very excited that we're still able to do this.
Tina, your audio is horrendous. Can't really hear you. All right, let's skip ahead. We'll come back to Tina. Let's go to, oh, wait, Tina, you look like you got it fixed.
Is that better?
A little bit. Let's give it a try.
Hi, thank you once again for being here. And those of you that are candidates, our hats off to you. Wave your hand in the air, everyone.
No, Tina, we lost you. We lost you. You're out. Sorry. I'll give you another try. We're going to go to Chris Pearson, our VP of Political Action, and we'll try to come back to Tina after Chris. Chris, I have asked you to unmute, so go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
Well, thank you, Mitch. I just want to remind everybody, as we had in our social hour, it was pointed out by Dan McMillan, Eric Herford, and Michelle Krug. Friday is the deadline to file as a candidate to run in November, unless there's no incumbent. The deadline is extended to next Wednesday, August 12th, and as Dan McMillan so greatly pointed out, you got to do it tomorrow. So if you could, I posted it in the chat room, and I'll do it again. The link for sddemocrats.org/candidates, sddemocrats.org/candidates. List all the offices in San Diego County that we have candidates for. And quite frankly, we're doing better this year than we have in the past, but there are still a number of offices, especially those small school boards in the Far East County that we've never really fielded candidates for. We still need candidates, but time is of the essence. If you could text somebody that link, sddemocrats.org/candidates, who might be considering a run for office, now is the time to do it. I won't be offended if you do it while I'm speaking. I won't be offended while you do it while anything's going on tonight. But if you can think of anybody in your contact list who might be considering a run for office, it's imperative that we get the word out that the deadline is now. It's Friday. If they're interested in running, they have to contact the registrar of voters tomorrow. Shoot them online tonight, and as Dan McMillan said, make an appointment and get in there before Friday at 5 o'clock, which is the deadline. We still need candidates. sddemocrats.org/candidates. It's a message that we need to ring loud and clear and as wide as possible. So anybody in your contact list anywhere you can post. Please help us out. The time is here. The deadline is here. The deadline is Friday, unless no incumbent is running. The deadline is next Wednesday, August 12th. But the deadline to file for November is this Friday, August 7th. And that's just a couple of days. And we still need candidates. And the list of candidates, one more time, is at sddemocrats.org/candidates. And I've posted it in the chat room. So one more shot. Thank you, Mitch.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So I have a chat message from Tina, who's just says that she wants to announce that the board election for our club will be held after the election in January. So if you want to run as a board member, your time will come after November. And I've asked Tina if she has anything else to say, because she seems to be having some audio problems, which happens to the best of us. So now we're going to have some words from board member Sean Quintel, another member whose last name I'm mispronouncing, who's going to talk about California ballot initiatives. Sean, I'm going to unmute you momentarily. And, oh, okay. I once again forgot that you were coming in out of us. Oh, you're already unmuted. Take it away, Sean.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mitch. As you're all Californians, so you're all familiar with the annual or biannual ritual of receiving a paperback novel in the mail. It's a ballot, and there's a little teeny tiny print on it, and you're supposed to read through all the ballot propositions. So none of us are as young as we used to be. So in the interest of protecting everyone's eyesight, board thought it'd be a good idea if we sort of synopsize some of these propositions for you, a handful at a time over this meeting, and then the next 2 monthly meetings before the election. So today we'll go with 5 or so. Now to give you kind of a visual cue here, made some PowerPoint slides for you. And we'll start with Proposition 15. As Californians also will know, Proposition 13 from 1978 has a long and storied, perhaps infamous history in that it stabilized and capped residential property rates and other property rates for taxation, but it also had the consequence of really hobbling the state's revenue base. So Proposition 15 will amend the state constitution to subject all industrial and commercial properties worth more than $3 million to a different sort of tax assessment. Rather, it'll be tax then assessed on market value and not subject to the 2% annual cap that it has been. That's not on the sale of properties, it's on year-to-year assessments. It's important to note that all residential and agricultural properties are exempt from this. So it's just commercial properties. If ever there was a time when we needed to enhance the state's coffers, it's now. We're looking at probably a $54 billion deficit because of the devastation of COVID and the expenses that's visited on the state. If 15 is enacted and goes into practice, they're projecting probably almost $12.5 billion a year revenue, and it's set to go 60-40, 60 to local jurisdictions and then the rest to schools. So it's a very dispensable argument, I'd say, to say that this is good for schools. It will allow tax revenues to help with housing needs. And it's also good for smaller business startups too, because those businesses that are worth less than 3 million, like a lot of, dry cleaners and restaurants and that sort of things, they'll be exempt from that too. From 15, there's 2 we'll group together, and those are 17 and 18. And these group together because they both kind of get at expanding the exercise of democracy and the voting franchise. 17 would allow parolees to vote. Probationers already can, but parolees can't. I used to do this for a living. If you're interested in knowing what the difference is, you can ask me and I'll tell you. But for our purposes here, it's fair to say it would be more just to allow folks that are out on parole to exercise their democratic rights the same as everyone else. And this would affect to the tune of probably 40,000 of our fellow Californians. And 18 is a more simple, straightforward proposition, and it just allows 17-year-olds to vote in the primary if they're going to turn 18 before the general. So a lot of states already do that. It's a rather uncontroversial suggestion. And the last two we'll look at today are kind of centered around criminal justice issues. And first is Proposition 25, which ends the practice of cash bail in the state. In 2018, SB 10 passed, which essentially ended the cash bail system, passed both chambers of the legislature, and Governor Brown signed it. And it is to be replaced with a system where after folks are arrested and they go for initial hearings, the judges will use risk assessments to determine if someone who's detained could be granted pretrial release, and if they are, what kind of conditions they would be subject to during that release. It's cash bail is kind of an awful thing in a lot of ways, and has been through much of our history. It perpetuates a lot of inequities in the justice system, and those are felt enormously more by folks of color and people who are poor. And, you know, if you are arrested on a misdemeanor and you have to even spend a few days in jail, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can easily lose your job. You can lose childcare. You can lose an apartment. It's can have really devastating consequences. And what this law does is give the decision to judges, and they can use these actuarial risk assessments to inform their decisions. But it would always be a judge's choice whether this person seems violent, this person seems like a danger, this person seems like they're a flight risk, then they would be detained. But other than that, people wouldn't have to be locked up and stay locked up just because they didn't have money. And then the last one we'll look at today is Proposition 20. And this, they kind of call it tougher on parole, I think, as a marketing thing. Since 2014, both in 2014 and 2016, voters approved propositions that reduced penalties for some theft and drug crimes. And they expanded the number of folks that are imprisoned that would be eligible for parole. And those are non-violent crimes. Proposition 20 would reverse some of those changes, and then it would also require that you have to collect DNA on certain misdemeanors. This is backed by by some prosecutors and some sort of law and order types. It's really kind of backsliding, I think, is a fair argument to make, and that related to what we just talked about, increasing the penalties for low-level offenses like this disproportionately harm people that are on the lower end of socioeconomic strata and people of color. So to review what we looked at today, these four have all been endorsed and are supported by the state Democratic Party. So yes on 15, 17, 18, and 25. And the party's position is no on Proposition 20, that tougher on parole proposition. So that's what we had to talk about today. We'll have experts here in a moment to go into great detail about the affirmative action proposition. But if you have any questions, please feel to reach out to me or anybody else on the board, and we can elaborate or let you know other stuff on the next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Sean. That was very useful and important information. And now we're going to move on to talk about bringing affirmative action back to California. I'd like to start by introducing the moderator for the next portion of the programming, Professor Emeritus, a valued member and returning moderator, Carol Perkins. So Carol, I believe you are unmuted. So I'm going to fade into the background here and let you take over.
Okay. Are we here?
I am here.
Okay.
I'm going to unmute the other speakers. If you want to just go ahead and I will,
Oh, all right.
I will be doing
Okay.
that.
This is just a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to hear the real story behind a proposition that will be before us in November. Dr. Shirley Weber's ACA 5 has come into the proposition level now. It'll be Proposition 16 on the ballot. And tonight we are so lucky to have Shirley Weber here and Bud Mehan and Ric Epps, and I believe Lorena Gonzalez will be here a little later. So I'm going to introduce Shirley first. Dr. Weber has been the 79th Assembly District Representative since 2012. Previously, as you all know, she's been on the San Diego Board of Education, and she was a longtime professor of African American Studies at San Diego State University. She lived in Los Angeles as a child and attended UCLA. Seems there's a UCLA theme running through tonight a bit here. She helped found the African American Studies program at San Diego State. She's been on many boards, both in San Diego and throughout the state. And if she is right here with us, I think I would really appreciate her starting us off by explaining how it is that this is the time to bring forward the idea that we need affirmative action back as part of our state value system, or part of our state policies. This has been since 1996. It was eliminated via a proposition. So I'd really like to hear a little background from Dr. Weber, and then how she became the person who wanted to bring this forward as the sponsor for this proposition.
Well, thank you, Carol, and I hope you can all hear me. Thank you, and thanks for the invitation to be here. I always love to be able to be with the Mesa's Democratic Club, and not always able because you meet on Wednesdays, but unfortunately due to the pandemic, but then fortunately due to the pandemic and Zoom, we're able to make these meetings more often. So I really appreciate being here tonight. You know, Proposition 209, for those of us who can remember it, remember the devastating effects that it had on us in terms of a state. California is only one of 8 states that do not allow jurisdictions to have any kind of equal opportunity and access programs at all, and to make sure that we're fair in dealing with women and dealing with people of color in our state, and trying to correct some of the ills of the past through an affirmative action, through an affirmative effort to do that. It is not a situation where you have where you can have quotas, because quotas are illegal, but it is an opportunity to go into those areas where we know we have difficulty and create opportunities for persons to be able to compete fairly for contracts, for entrance to institutions and universities. So we had affirmative action in California, like so many other states, for many, many years. And then in 1996, Proposition 209 came onto the ballot, got a majority because it only required a majority vote, and then banned any kind of affirmative action, any kind of consideration of race or gender in contracts or employment. And so it was the first time that it was actually banned, not so much, and so as a result, it prevented jurisdictions from using any kind of consideration. Race has never been able to be the determining factor, and neither has gender been able to be the determining factor. But even the Supreme Court has said it can be one of the many factors that you consider as you talk about what your jurisdiction wants to look like, what you want your state and your county to be a part of. And to ban it, which is what it did, made us not capable of meeting those needs. When I was on the school board, we had issues with Latino girls who were not doing well in school. So we could structure a whole program and hire folks to focus on helping Latinas begin to have a positive image of themselves. And we hired a group and they did that. We did the same thing when we had African-American males failing in our schools. We hired 4 what we call pupil advocates, these 4 men who went into the schools to work with kids, to build up their self-esteem. And we saw our numbers increase immensely from young men who were disinterested in school, and all of a sudden the numbers began to increase, the positive self-esteem increased, and we saw the growth that was there. Those things became illegal when Prop 209 came into existence. We could not do those things. We could not reach out to young women who were to increase their numbers in STEM and science education. We'd have to use other means, or we'd have to have a general program and let everybody come, but not focus on the needs of women and not focus on the needs of people of color. So as a result of that, we saw a tremendous decline immediately in the issues and began to decline in the opportunities. When I was on the Citizen Equal Opportunity Commission, and I was chair of it back in 2010, I think it was, I looked at the data, and during before affirmative action, women and minorities had like 30 to 40% of all the contracts in the city of San Diego, and I was appalled because at that time, in 2010, we only had 1.5% of women having contracts in the city of San Diego. We had dropped immensely, and men had 98-point-some-odd% of all of the contracts in the city and in San Diego. And so it was amazing to me. And I used to always go to meetings and say, you women should be outraged. You should be upset. You're over 50% of the population. Yet when it comes to contracting in the city, we're such a small percentage. And we saw this in every area that was there. And even right now in Los Angeles, with all of its diversity, I think women have in the city have 2% of the contracts. Latinos have 2%. And African Americans' numbers are so small, they're insignificant. They're not even 1% of the contracting for the city and for the county. And so what happens, of course, is when you don't have access to those kinds of resources, it's very difficult to build your business, to stabilize your business, because government contracts are real stabilizers for business. And so we could not do that. Only if there was a federal contract could we then begin to proportion it out and say, okay, 40% of this contract is under the federal government, so we can use additional variables, additional criteria for that 40%. So anyway, so here we were 24 years later, not seeing any progress in any area. They pitted people against each other in the campaign and made it seem like, well, the Asians are going to lose a lot of seats in the university, and that's why you need this fair process. And yet what we saw is that we saw no increase in Asian population. In fact, we saw a decline in the data with Asian populations at the university, and a decline in every area that was there. We didn't know at the time, at least I didn't know at the time, that this initiative was actually sponsored by the AGC, the Association of General Contractors. The developers actually funded Prop 209. And we thought it was an educational thing, and it was really being funded through the developers, who then benefit immensely from the contracts in the cities and the counties and all the things that happen. So as a result, this has always been a bone of a concern of mine and my colleagues, because many of them, all of us had benefited at some point from affirmative action, whether it's special programs for graduate students to increase our population of graduate students, to do outreach for them, students who are coming into the university for the first time, and this is for their first generation college students, having tutoring and support. And I think Bud Mehan will address some of those challenges that were being faced. And we were being made to find alternative or ways in which we tried to meet these needs that were there. But it was a frustration for all of us because I felt that we didn't fight hard enough against Prop 209. They used Dr. King's concept that I don't want to be judged by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. And they still do that today. And I said that was a dream of Dr. King. It was in his I Have a Dream speech. It was not the reality, but it was the dream. And we are striving to get to that dream. But in the meanwhile, you have to do something in an affirmative way to begin to address the generations and generations of unequal treatment and attitudes with regards to those kinds of things that we have to face if we're going to equalize and hopefully increase the pay of women, the positions of others, in terms of having a fair and equal society that we have. So as a result, most of us felt very frustrated by not being able to do it. And ever since I've been in the assembly now for 8 years, everyone has talked about how can we reverse Proposition 209? How can we make this change? And generally people felt we can't do it. You know, it's too difficult. It's hard to explain. People will fight against it. You know, you have this outside force that's constantly pushing against it. And so this year, back in the fall, I was approached about the issue of affirmative action. And most folks knew that I was in favor of trying to reverse it, to appeal it and repeal Prop 209. So I was approached by it, and I said, okay, we'll meet about it after session. And we looked at the data, and it looked like for the first time that the numbers were there. We realized this is a new generation that is there that's basically dealing with this issue. And so we began to look at some of the data, and it looked a little bit better than it had in the past. It impressed me most when I went to UC Berkeley. I went there in the fall as chair of the campus climate committee. And I was talking to students about the campus and things they thought would be helpful on the campus to have more opportunities for different kinds of things and issues that they had on the campus as chair of the campus climate committee. And at the end of this couple of hours of discussion of a very diverse population of students at UC Berkeley, I said to them, what do you think we should do? What can we do to really, as a legislature, help move this along? And they were unified. It was interesting to me, unified in this statement. We need to reverse Prop 209. We need to repeal it. I was shocked. These were students of the university. We need to, I said, well, why? They said, well, because when we repeal it, we can then structure our schools so that we're more open and receptive to people of color. We can have a different, diverse faculty. We can also have people who work here who are different, so the students can, and so they had this whole vision that would, as a result of having this ban on anything that would consider ethnicity, that it limited them in their ability to attract students, but also to attract faculty and others, because other campuses outside of California could do that and could create a climate that thought that was more attractive and desirable. So as a result, we took all that into consideration. At the beginning of the year, we met with all the caucuses, and people had apprehensions and concerns, and many are afraid of failure, and went through this whole bit. But we decided, the African American caucus was clear in its commitment. All 10 of us were clear that we were going to fight to repeal affirmative action, and others would said, yeah, we should do it. But there were some that, maybe not, here and there. They were kind of with us, but not sure if we could do it, because it required us to do 2/3 on the floor of the Assembly and the Senate. Because we weren't doing the collection of signatures, because that was very expensive and that would have cost millions of dollars, and we didn't have a major benefactor doing it. So we decided then that we would do it through the Assembly, through the legislative process. And we were working with the Equal Justice Society. And so we began this process to try to get this bill that was going to repeal Proposition 209. And very simple bill that it repeals it, which means it repeals the ban, that you can't ban people from using various race or gender as a variable, and it's permissive because your city, your county doesn't have to do it. But if it wants to do it, it gives you a chance to do that in your own area. And so as a result, we began the process to do that. And we ran into some general obstacles of people who said it couldn't happen, it wouldn't happen, the public wouldn't be ready for it, and all those kinds of things. It'd be difficult to explain. And so we went through the process of doing that. But my caucus was pretty adamant about, no, we're going to take this. And even when folks were getting nervous and deciding we couldn't do it, the caucus, the African American caucus, was clear. No, we're going to do this, and we're going to move this forward. And if we don't do it now, we never will, because this is going to be a historic election in November. We have people turning out more than ever before. We have a lot of young people who are voting, who are interested. And so we began to do this. Then, of course, what happened was COVID came into play. And when the virus came, we were concerned. We said, oh my God, we will never be able to get this message out about this bill, because the only thing you can hear about is the virus. Every day it's the virus, and there's no other bill, there's no other discussion. It's always about the virus and how we're going to fight this virus and overcome it. And so many were very discouraged with, said, well, maybe we should do it at another time because we can't get our message out. We can't do this, we can't do that. And it was interesting. I was talking to someone from my church about it, and they said, don't be discouraged. You never are. Hang in there. God is going to send you a ram in the bush. And I had to go read about Isaiah and Abraham and remember what that was about. And so I said, okay, I hope so, because I need this real quick, because I got to get this 2/3 vote. And sure enough, it was interesting, because with the death of George Floyd, people began to see the disparities. And we've been talking about that in terms of the disparities that existed under COVID. But people actually saw the disparity and the inhumanity that had been allowed to grow and fester in this country, that someone could actually sit on a person's neck for almost 9 minutes and seem to have no remorse. People saw that, and they realized that we had to change what we're doing. We had to diversify our population. We had to go back and look at some things that we had forgotten about. And as a result, it didn't become easy. I still had to fight for every vote in the House. But at least I told them I didn't have to explain to them that racism is real, that these issues of the isms, the sexism is real, and it's infecting our society. And we have to do something immediately now to address this issue. Otherwise, it will continue to go and fester. That we can no longer pretend it will solve itself. It will not solve itself. And so as a result of that, I went to the first committee, and they gave me, unfortunately, the speaker didn't really believe in this. So he didn't think we would be able to pull it off. I got the worst committee to go to. And I had conservative Democrats who didn't want to vote, who felt they'd done enough for women and what have you. And as a result, I was really in a quandary because I had 3 votes and I needed 4. And so I called the members of the caucus, the Black caucus and the Latino caucus, and said, I got 3 votes, I need 4 to get out of this committee. And I want to get out of this committee. If I don't get out of this committee, it's dead. The bill goes nowhere. And so sure enough, they got on the phone and they start calling. But you know what I did? I called a man that I have been talking to for a while, and some of you will be shocked who I called. I called Randy Vopel, the Republican in Santee. And I called Randy, and I had given Randy material before, and he said, Shirley, I've always supported affirmative action. I've always supported equal opportunity. He said, I'll think about it, of course. And of course, the Republican Party would be furious. And so Randy thought about it, and he thought about it, and he said, I might have to do it because I got a member of my community walking around in a Klan outfit that I don't believe in. And so we thought about it, you know, and so he said, I don't want this bill to die. He said, because I think that people need to vote on it. And so that morning I got up and I had 3 Democrats and maybe Randy, not sure. But what happened was a member called me and said, hey, I've shook out the trees and this other Democrat is going to vote for it. He has to vote for it. And so I had 4. And so I told Randy, you don't have to vote for this. I got it, okay? But the interesting thing is after I finished my presentation, Randy was the first one to speak on behalf of the bill and voted for it, to the peril of his own party, and is still mad at him, but he voted for this bill to get out of committee. Because I said, I just need to get out of committee. You don't have to vote for it on the floor. I just need to get out of committee. And he voted for it, and as a result, he shamed the Democrats, and I got out of committee 6-1.
Excellent.
Because he shamed the Democrats. And so we then went to the floor, and we fought for every vote for these 54 votes. And I had a good colleague. The Republicans were pulling, the Democrats and the Chicano caucus was pulling and pushing, and the API caucus started pushing. Then the women came across and they endorsed the bill, because once we got out 6-1, they could, oh my God, Shirley can do this. It's real. You know, it's going to happen. And so at that point, we got those caucuses together, and we ended up getting out of the assembly with 60, and we only needed 54 votes. We got 60 votes. And then we got out of the Senate with, we needed 27 in the Senate, and we got 30.
Yeah.
So that then put it on the ballot, because it doesn't have to be signed by the governor.
Yeah.
It has to, if it gets 2/3 vote of the Assembly and the Senate, it goes to the ballot. So therefore, we're at the ballot now, and we have a coalition. At the time, we had a couple of hundred persons. We have now probably 300 organizations. League of Women Voters, we've got ACLU, we've got the California State University's the Board of Trustees, the University of California's Board of Regents. All of these folks have unanimously endorsed it. So has the Community College Board of Directors endorsed it. We've got several different, the mayor of LA, Garcetti, it has endorsed the bill and is working to bring other mayors along. We just got the support of the Democratic Party for Proposition 16. We just had a major kickoff yesterday with almost 1,000 people on Zoom that are working on behalf. We have a huge coalition of students at the university who are organized and tweeting all over the place for this bill. So the energy is there. We've raised a few $1 million so far. We've got additional goals. We've got money coming in to support the initiative. All of our leadership at Capitol has supported this particular bill. And so we're moving forward. But you know, it's one of these things, and people now understand what it's about. We're putting out a lot of information on it. We're optimistic that this is the time that we get all of our folks out to vote, that this bill will pass and will lift this veil from California that has been with us for 24 years, that banned us from doing any kind of outreach for equal opportunity and access in the state of California. So I'm excited about it. We're all excited, and just grateful that we could get to this point and obviously share all of this information with all of our clubs and organizations to basically be ready for November.
Thank you, Shirley. I hope we have some time at the end for questions,
Sure.
but I would like to go on now and have Bud Mehan maybe talk about his experience in kind of trying to circumvent what happened. Bud, I didn't know you had a name called Bud. I mean, I didn't know you had a name except for Bud. Hugh Mehan. Anyway, Hugh Mehan has been at the Center for Research and Educational Equity, Access, and Teaching Excellence, CREATE, at UCSD. Bud is now retired, and he has been a professor of sociology at UCSD for many, many years also. His efforts at UCSD created the Preuss School, which has been a 6th grade through 12th grade charter school in the San Diego City district, which has brought in low-income students, scholars, kids who go on almost 100% to go to university and to be very, very successful in university. So Bud, would you tell us a little bit about how the CREATE and the Preuss School have tried to circumvent this affair of not having affirmative action guidelines to follow?
I'm very happy to do that and very happy to be here. I'm going to speak from PowerPoint slides because I have a couple of numbers I want to present. And now I'm told.
Oh, can you give him permission to?
I need permission so
I
that you
just
can see
did.
my screen.
You have permission now.
Okay. So good. Go up here.
Is it showing?
No, right here. Go up here. And say.
Your slide?
See it nice and clear.
Okay, you should see a slide now that gives the title. And I want to talk about Prop 209 from the point of view of what's happened at the University of California from the time that affirmative action through Prop 209 was instituted. And I will be talking about the work that we've done on our campus and a couple of other minor campuses in the UC system. Some of you may be familiar with them. I understand some of you are connected to UCLA, others to Berkeley, and I've got a picture of Davis up there because they've worked very closely with us. Just for your quick information, Shirley has given us a very detailed history of the pain and agony associated with Prop 209. But just as a reminder, from the point of view of the University of California, 209 actually had a predecessor, and that was Regents' decisions, SP1 and SP2, that for the purposes of the University of California, eliminated the use of race as a factor in UC admissions. And then the next year is when Prop 209 came in and had an effect across all university business within the university, not just in the university, but the state of California. So Prop 209, from the university's point of view, extended the ban that much further. And you've heard about what Dr. Weber has been advocating and leading in a very important move to ban the ban, if you will, in this legislative section. I'd also just like to point out another major project that she's been shepherding through the legislature now, and that's the $1 Million Hoods Project, which has to do with significant prison reform, and perhaps she can talk about that during the question and answer period. But I just want to point out that she's been a significant, as you well know, as a local person, a significant player in issues of equality across the board. Now, when SP1 and SP2 were approved by the regents, our president, who was Dick Atkinson at the time, who had previously been our chancellor, challenged that decision, basically saying that it would be inappropriate historically, it would be furthering inequality within the system, and a range of other arguments of that sort. He was preemptively dismissed with regard to those arguments. Basically, the regent said to him, Dr. Atkinson, if you do not think you can implement SP1 and SP2, we'll find someone who can. So he worked very hard to modify the impact of SB1 and SB2 on university policy and practice. And in particular, he expanded outreach programs. Early academic outreach is a state-funded activity. The TRIO program is a similar program that is federally funded, which has university faculty, staff, students connect to families and students at the high school level, encouraging them to take the courses necessary, the tests necessary to become eligible to go to both Cal State and UC, and also give preparation on test practices and the rest. I think a significant addition occurred not in 1 year, but this took a couple of years, where the way in which students were judged for being eligible for the university was changed significantly. I'm not overstating it when I say that the prior method for accepting students was basically to take their grade point average, take the decimal point out. So instead of 3.29, it would read 329 and add a 0. And then take the SAT scores, add them up and go down 12%. That's just a little bit of an exaggeration. My point is that SAT scores and high school grades were the main way in which the university at that point admitted students into the system. Cal State, much the same. The university, actually on both Cal State and UC, initiated what came to be called comprehensive review of students' applications. And that required a review by a committee of faculty and staff to determine what a student's life was like beyond testing. This involved having students writing personal statements, obtaining letters of recommendation, and the committee was encouraged, in fact, instructed to take into account students' background experiences. Now remember, we could not use race as a factor explicitly in admissions decisions. However, if someone was living in an impoverished neighborhood, perhaps an impoverished family, that could be defined as an adverse situation. And if that student was getting good grades and was performing well and taking challenging courses, AP courses, college prep courses, that could be seen as overcoming adversity and meeting challenges if the committee determined it that way. So in effect, what was happening was a shift from taking race explicitly into account in decisions for admission and taking into account conditions in people's lives, especially in students whose families came from disadvantaged backgrounds. A new vocabulary item entered the scene at that point, and that was underrepresented minority groups, URM, underrepresented minority groups, which if you took a look at the distribution of the population by ethnicity, white, Black, Latino, Asian, Native American, and determined what percentage of them existed in the high school and population of the state, and what percentage of them were actually getting into the University of California, there was great disparity, especially among Latino and Black students. Not so much with white and not so much with Asian, and we'll come back to that issue. So that notion of being an underrepresented minority within the university, since we're among friends, I'll use this expression, became a runaround for the use of race in admissions within the university. And that became pretty much standard practice over the last 10 and 15 years. Now, that was the University of California response, campus by campus. Our campus did that, those same sort of things, expanding outreach, and we did comprehensive review of files. But led by my colleague and Shirley's friend, Cecil Lytle, we also initiated a dramatic new approach to the issue of underrepresentation in the University of California. And with significant legislative support, we opened what came to be called the Preuss School, named after Peter Preuss, who became a regent in the year that we were talking about, 1995, 1996, from San Diego. And he became a strong advocate for the idea of a model school. And we proposed that it be built not necessarily in the community of San Diego, but on our campus, so that we could set up a model for students who have been previously not welcomed and not encouraged to come to our campus could in fact be encouraged to do so. And the idea would be that we were going to set up a special school aimed at students who were from low-income backgrounds. Remember, we can't take race into account, who came from low-income backgrounds. Their parents had an income of twice the poverty level for a family of 4, and their parents could not have received a bachelor's degree. Now, our colleagues in economics ran statistical models to see what the ethnic distribution would be if we applied those criteria and what the distribution would be with regard to Black and Latino students if we use those criteria instead of race explicitly, and it came out in a positive way. We actually took that data to Ward Connerly, who was the member of the Regents, who was the most adamant defender of affirmative action at the time. And he acknowledged that that model would be appropriate because it was not taking race into account. So that became the basis for forming the school. Now, that Shirley just pointed out how complicated it is to get a good idea through the legislature. We have the same problem getting a good idea through our faculty. Faculty at UCSD was not originally unanimous in its support for setting up a school on campus. We received all sorts of criticism from everything from, oh, you're going to take money from our research accounts. There are going to be little kids running around campus and they'll get in the way. Where are you going to put the campus? It'll get in the way of my chemistry lab, et cetera, et cetera. We had to overcome all of those, which took a couple of years and lots of coffee drinking in various departments. In addition to setting up the Preuss School in the aftermath of the elimination of affirmative action, the Center for, this is a long, cumbersome title, the Center for Research and Education Access and Teaching Excellence, which goes by the acronym of CREATE, was also established as a partner to the school. Okay. So that there would be research conducted on the conditions that were amenable to helping underrepresented minority youth become prepared to go to college. And I was the first and longtime director of that center. Under our most recent chancellor, Padri Khosla, there's been another addition to what we've been doing to try to ameliorate the disparity in admissions into our campus. And that is for students who go to Preuss and another school that has become a partnership school, which I'll describe in a minute, Gompers Preparatory Academy in southeastern San Diego, and Lincoln High School, which is also in the Encanto neighborhood. Students who go to those schools, or if you're a Native American anywhere in the state of California, and you apply to UCSD, are accepted and enroll, you will receive a $10,000 scholarship per year for 4 years. Now, I'm going to give you characteristics of how it is that our student population has changed through time in the direction of better representation. I think that the scholarship has played a significant role in that activity. It's amazing the extent to which students who are hovering between whether they want to come to UCSD or Berkeley or Michigan or Harvard, whatever, when they're suddenly their entire cost of going to college is taken care of, tips them a little bit in our direction. So we have to give credit where credit is due, and that was the initiative of our current chancellor, who is quite an advocate for affirmative action of all sorts. So I think I've answered this kind of question. Why was a model school seen as an important issue on the campus to deal with affirmative action and the fact that race had been taken away from us as a factor in admissions? There's no doubt that we recognize at on our campus and other campuses that race is vital when we're talking about admissions. But we also have to take into account the fact that many underrepresented minority youth are going to schools, elementary, middle, high schools, that are not giving them a powerful enough education such that when it comes time for them to consider going to college, they are not well enough prepared. And so what we decided to do when building our model school was to make it as rigorous as we possibly could to demonstrate the efficacy of the students that we're talking about, so that the criticism would be, oh, they're not good enough to go to that school, would just be taken off the map. So we were, part of the model school was demonstrating what requires and what contributes to successful educational practices for kids from low-income backgrounds. So when the school was built and it opened 1999, we talked about it as preparing students for, as part of a college-going culture, that the students, everything that they experienced at the school and on our campus would be encouraging them and preparing them to go to college when it came time for them to graduate from high school. We came to talk about one of those features as detracking. We have only one track at the school, and that is college prep. The only courses that are available for students to take are college prep. That's operationally defined as, if some of you know the vocabulary, A through G courses, right? A certain number of 4 courses in English, 4 courses in math, 4 courses in fine arts, et cetera, A through G. We also do at the upper grade level, 10 through 12, ensure that all of those courses are also AP qualified, so that students, AP being advanced placement, students get extra credit for it when they apply to college and enroll, and they're getting a more advanced course that then can equal a course at the college level. So students in some cases get pretty much eliminate their freshman year as a result of taking those courses. But more importantly than just ticking off a box in terms of getting into school, what we were arguing was that these students could perform at the highest level given appropriate supports. I think the most visible and perhaps one of the most important features of a support for the students is that we extended the school year. The typical school year in US schools, including San Diego, is 180 school days a year, minus 4 or 5 days for teacher in service, for improving their teacher quality, which is important, but it's not when you subtract it from classroom time. We moved it from 180 school days to 195. Students going to Preuss go to school 15 extra days per year. That became a challenge for lots and lots of reasons. One, parents and kids did not like the idea at first of starting school earlier in August and ending later in June when their friends were not doing that. So we had to deal with family issues. It got in the way of people's vacations, got in trouble in conflict with families who would go to Mexico for quinceañera or for the holidays, right? So we had to deal with those social or cultural issues, if you want to call them that. Also, we had to raise the money for it. The state of California provides funding for 180 school days. We needed to raise money for the other 15. The school is called the Preuss School, not accidentally. Peter Preuss, then early regent, led a fundraising drive to secure significant funds for that extra 15 days. That was concurrent with his appointment as a regent. Since that time, we've continued to raise money for that extra period of time that the kids are in school. Now, we're back to the model school issue for a moment. The school has had many, many visitors. It's almost constant that people from other schools around San Diego, around California, across the United States, Canada, who come to see what the school does. And when we get to that point in the discussion saying, oh yes, we have extended learning time to 15 extra days a year. And they say, how do you pay for that? And we say fundraising. Say, oh, I'm not sure we can do that. That's a real wrinkle. Now, in the early days, when affirmative action was first eliminated and the university was investing more money in attempting to achieve a diverse student body, the legislature actually set aside an extra $1 million a year for the Preuss School. And that lasted for about 5 years, and then we became fundraising on our own, all right? So that's one of the major features. And the reason we're saying that is if students are struggling with a difficult curriculum, they cannot expect them to master it in only the 176 to 180 school days.
Yeah.
They need that extra time that is exquisitely demanding and exquisitely supported by wonderful teachers, extra tutors that come from the university, support provided to parents who are brought in as members of the board, who are invited to come in and help in after school programs, to participate in governance, right? A wide range of supports in that respect. Teachers are wonderful, work at the Preuss School. They not only teach the regular hours and all the rest, but they also give of their time for extra tutoring after school, on weekends, and the rest. We also convince, we get university students to come and serve as tutors on campus. One other point I just want to mention is that we extended Preuss into the community because of a considerable amount of community interest. Instead of having a school just on our campus, we worked with community leaders to open a school like Preuss, but different in many respects, in southeastern San Diego in the Encanto neighborhood. And it's, in a sense, a partnership school. It has many of the same characteristics in terms of student population, the same kind of courses. And I would say one of the biggest differences between Gompers and Preuss is their family resource center.
Okay.
They have developed, or actually it was there before the school converted into a charter. And they maintained it and extended it so that the needs of families financially, socially, and all dimensions are met as much as possible. So that's a development that has been significant in the local context. This chart is not possible to read, but I just want to point out, just look at the top part of it, that there is a network of schools across the state that have developed in the same way that Preuss has. UCLA now has 2 schools, as does UCSD. Cal Prep at Berkeley has 2, and UC Davis has another. And on this chart, we can talk about it later during question and answers, are a wide range of successful statistics. I'm just going to say one thing, and then because I've gone over my time. One of the important things that has happened operationally is that students who go to Preuss, Gompers, and what we call university assisted schools across the state, is that the percentage of kids going to the University of California from Black and Latino backgrounds has increased significantly. Just take, you're gonna have to, I guess, take my word on this. We have doubled the number of Black and Latino students in the University of California. The percentage doesn't change that much because of a whole host of statistical factors, but across the system, there's a doubling. UCLA has gone not quite twice as many Black students, but significantly more Latino students. UCSD, the same. So, okay. So that's the good news. That's the good news. Now,
We got it.
what we have a whole set of the current situation that are negative. There's one positive point that I'll mention here and then stop, and that is the Harvard discrimination case. Interestingly, Harvard was challenged a year ago for discriminating against Asian students, not Black, not Latino, but Asian students, because the proportion of Asian students at Harvard was lower than the population in the community at large. That case has worked its way through the court system, and it was found that Harvard was not discriminating because it took race into account, but it was not a determining factor in admissions. That is seen, that has rippled through the higher ed community saying, aha,
Okay.
there might be a sea change in the way that we think about race. So
Yeah.
That would
the
be
work
very
that Shirley
welcome
is
news.
doing
Thank
now
you.
is getting support in other states. And
That's-
just one
Thank
other
you
point
very
I
much.
want
we
to
need
end
to
on.
we need to wrap up and move on.
I know.
At this point. Thank you very much
Can't stop.
for speaking.
But last sentence, my last sentence, Mitch. Ironically, it was the regents of University of California who eliminated affirmative action on our campus. The regents just voted unanimously to support Shirley's work on the ballot for banning the ban.
Yes.
That is great news. Thank you.
Yes, and that is the most important thing, that we start to look at who is going to be in the coalition to support Prop 16. I would like to ask Lorena Gonzalez, who I think is with us now, if she could speak a little bit to some of these issues about the proposition itself. And I know that Ric Epps is here too. But Lorena, I think we all know who Lorena Gonzalez is, 80th Assembly District. She's been serving since 2013. I think she's the better half of the most powerful duo in our county. She works for healthcare and workers' rights. She used to head the San Diego and Imperial Valley Labor Council. She's got her BA from Stanford, her MA from Georgetown, and her law degree from UCLA. So if Lorena, if you could kind of fill us in on some of the factors that you see important as Proposition 16 moves forward. Who do you have that will be supportive? Who do you think we need to worry about? What do you see as the propositions, how we're going to go forward with it here?
Well, thanks for asking. Thanks for having me. I'm sorry I was late. We came straight out of committee and trying obviously in the dark. I couldn't get the lighting right, but thank you for having me. I love to be with this club. It's one of my favorites, of course. First, I just, on a personal level, there are a few things that were more important to so many of us in the legislature than getting this done. You know, I think I could name the number of Black and brown legislators who basically, when we got elected, said, what can we do to restore affirmative action? Like, that was a priority from day one. And here we are, thanks to the hard work of Dr. Weber, of actually getting that chance. And so for me personally, it's great that people read out my resume, but I'm the first to say I am a product of affirmative action. I was among the last classes, in fact, the last law class admitted to UCLA under non-race neutral, if you will, qualifications or allowed race to be part of it. And the way it benefited me, and I'm very honest about this, I had already gone to Stanford and benefited from affirmative action to get into Stanford. I went to Georgetown and at UCLA Law. What happened was when I applied, they were able to offer me a scholarship to recruit me to go there based on the fact that I was part of an underrepresented minority group in the school. So I started UCLA on a full ride scholarship. Plus they gave me living money, $10,000 a year for books and living. That's unheard of to get through law school with no debt. And that it solidified my choice. And as a result, of course, I think I brought a different perspective to our law school classes. You know, the way we look at law, the way we look at different aspects of law are different according to our own personal experiences. And so I added that diversity. Well, that scholarship became illegal under Prop 209. So even though I had started on that, the next year it was not available. UCLA did help me find other ways to pay for it. I ended up not in debt. But it predominantly changed the next incoming class. So where in my class of law students, you know, we were in our second year, it was robust and diverse. The next group was lacking in both Black and brown students. I think there was one Black student the next year or two Black students. And so it really did have, I saw firsthand what happened. And we so often say like, okay, I get people we're told we're gonna create this race blind, color blind society. Well, 25 years later, that was a failed experiment. It was part of many failed experiments by Pete Wilson, let's be honest. And this is a baby of Pete Wilson. So it's time to look at what has happened. One of the biggest things that has happened in the timing of this, I mean, we didn't time it this way. We had already started with the bill. We started working on this years ago, but this particular ACA 5 for Proposition 16, we started working on in November or December, Dr. Weber could remind me. And so we knew we were doing this, but incredible is when we started seeing the really justified civil unrest, it's like people started to say, oh, wait a minute. There are differences in how individuals are treated by our state. You know, that our state, or the state police forces, state does not see people as they're not colorblind. It's not the same treatment. And so I think it really opened up the opportunity for us in a way that there will be, hopefully, I say, one more silver lining to this god awful tragedy of people dying at the hands of the police. But I think that this is going to give us an opportunity. And we saw, I think, with our colleagues, a lot more support. You know, at first people were like, oh, how is this going to be? I'm not sure if I'm there. And then pretty soon we had everybody there. And we're seeing it with groups. People are like, yes, I want to do something about the disparate impact that state policies have on Black and Brown Californians, and this is a way to do that. And so it of course helps not only with our schools, and we have, I mean, the list of supporters grow every day, and I think you have a tremendous group of folks who are now supporting it. And there's not a huge vocal opposition at this point. There's some oppositions, but it's much less than we anticipated. And you know, we even had, just think about this, we had a Republican in each house vote for this.
Yeah.
So I think people are like, hey, yeah, this maybe has not worked the way we thought it should work. And we should insist on being able to look at diversity and underrepresented minorities when we're making some state decisions. And don't forget, although we talk a lot about education because it's so important to so many of us, and we lived this experience, it's really important in contracting as well. And we saw the number of contracts, of course, that when you can go out and give extra points or ensure that we're utilizing the power of the state money, right? Whether they're construction contracts, whatever contracts they are, to ensure that we're uplifting and empowering businesses that are run by women, by African Americans, by Latinos, by Asians. And so we have this opportunity, and I just feel very strongly that we're going to actually look at what's happened now that people's eyes have been kind of wide open to oh wow, we can individually hope and pray we're colorblind, but we don't live in a colorblind society, and sometimes you have to take proactive, affirmative steps to fix that, and that's what we're going to do here.
That's perfect. I think we will come back, I'm sure, with other ideas that we want to field with you. But I want to have one last speaker, and that's Ric Epps, who is going to tell us a little political science and public administration professor now at Imperial Valley College. He was at San Diego State University for many years. Now he's at Imperial Valley. And he was at UCLA during the time that this proposition before in 1996, 209 was passed. So I'd like to hear from him and tell us what you learned through that process of going into a university and being a part of that whole cohort.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my colleagues on the panel for their contributions to making this happen and to the roles that they have played. You know, essentially, I, as a UCLA student, I also taught at UCSD for several years, and also San Diego State, which I retired from last year, and took a position as a president of the Senate at Imperial Valley College and faculty in political science. But I can tell you a couple of things that were really fascinating at that moment, back in the mid-90s, when I was a program director at UCLA in their academic advancement program, which is essentially their EOP program on campus. And I had this specialized program within that program for all the first generation and or economically disadvantaged students. So we had about 2,500 students that were in our program. And we had a vast infrastructure of, you know, administrators and counselors and peer counselors and all kinds of people to work with them to help them be able to compete with the typical UCLA student. And it's a very challenging moment because the statistics at that point in time, about 2 out of every 10 African-American males were graduating, 2 out of every 10 Hispanic males. 4 out of every 10 Hispanic females and 3 out of every 10 Black females were graduating from UCLA at the time. And it was interesting when Prop 209 first came in, when they first started discussing it, we were trying to get our students to get more politically active. And of course, we had activism in our program, and also through some of the other, MECHA and LASA and African American Students Union. There were lots of people, who were on the periphery of it. We were trying to get them to get out to vote because we said, you don't realize what's about to happen. If in a generation, you'll see the change of what takes place here. And it was, and one of the things about Prop 209 that I immediately at that point pointed out to people was that if you're foolishly thinking that just because we moved the bar of affirmative action from step A to step B, that somehow with Ward Connolly making this assertion that somehow that racism was going to disappear, that it was gone, that everybody was now going to play fair, it was just the most ludicrous, foolish, and irresponsible notion. And I can share with you very quickly a moment when I graduated from UCLA from undergrad, and it just so happened that day, most perfect day of your life, right? You graduate getting your bachelor's degree from one of the top schools in the country. Both the keynote speakers were Hispanic, the student speakers, one female, one male. And when the second person came up, which was the female, a group of students behind me who were having a good time said, "Oh, look, another beaner." And my day is forever tainted by that moment, right? Because I looked at them and said very loudly to them, I won't tell you, I can't say what I said, but let me put it to the point of saying, you need to shut your mouth. And how could you graduate from a school like this and be so ignorant, right? And so what we find in this struggle is that now we have institutionalized racism, right? And to understand the context of what that really means is a indictment on not just the conservatives who pushed away from this, but also I'm going to point out the liberals who also have backed away from these issues. And it's really even more damning, I would argue, than even the Republicans and conservatives on this issue, those who have called themselves liberal, but only liberal to a point, right? And this particular aspect, we saw immediately in the next couple of years, the number of Blacks and Hispanics on campus just disappeared. It was like a ghost town in UCLA in the late 90s with the number of Black and Hispanic students. And it was really sad because a lot of Hispanic and Black folks didn't go out and vote to protect it. And now their kids are the ones who are fighting to get into school, that they basically didn't understand how important it was to see this, to fight this proposition. And so now, as we move into this next iteration, which I'm just so thankful that I would have never thought that we were going to get down the road this far. And thankfully, through the sacrifice of George Floyd, through the social justice movements that are taking place, which I hope is the catalyst for a new civil rights movement, that we've started to recognize that if you move from step A to step B in these things, that you have to protect step B and keep moving forward. Otherwise, you will wind up back at step A again. And I think that's what happened. And I think now I hope that this new generation will stand up and take the first step in protecting their rights and undoing the damage that was done by this proposition.
Mm-hmm. It is the time. It seems like we have enough forward motion here, enough people from many, many parts of like you said, how could there be liberals who weren't for it?
Yeah, but that's a growing problem, by the way. I mean, I'm not trying to minimize that. That is a growing problem in the Democratic Party, is the liberal who is only so liberal.
Yeah.
They're liberal in one aspect, they're liberal in one aspect, but they don't. But when it comes to the issue of race or ethnicity, they still, even liberals struggle sometimes, and we have to be conscious of that.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you. I think I need to defer now to Tina or Mitch to say what we're going to do at this point. If you need to go on to our announcements at this point.
I think we got time for some questions here. I see a few in the chat. Anybody have any that haven't been answered yet?
I think we had, the idea that race itself was not allowed to be a factor. That's the issue when it came to higher ed. admission to higher ed schools. Is that also the factor in hiring for contracts and that sort of thing? Is that what you were saying, Shirley? Whoops, she's
Shirley, I'm going to check and see if there's something I've done wrong on my end that is a reason for your being muted. All right, there we go. Try that again.
Okay. Okay.
There you
Good.
are.
Yes. Yes. Race nor gender could be a factor in not only admissions and support services or whatever it may be in education, but also in contracting. And as I said, many of our universities, as was pointed by Bud, that began to figure out ways that they could attract more students and do different kinds of things that took a lot more resources in order to do it. But such was not the case in contracting and employment. And so that's where you see even a greater decline of folks participating in resources. And the estimate is that women leave about $1.1 billion every year on the table because they're not able to compete for the contracts in the city and the counties of California. So it helps also to exacerbate this wealth gap that we have between women and men. That's there. That's really real clear.
Okay. And for all of you, would you like to speak to the issue of the economic recession that we seem to be in, and probably there will be more of it? How do you think that this will affect the vote on this particular proposition and just on that kind of social action issue? Do you want to, Rick, do you want to say something, Rick? Lorena?
Oh, well, for me, I was going to say that, of course, the justification for trying to mitigate these types of programs is always money. That's always the first thing they try to sacrifice on the altar of change, is the financial aspect. And even though we're heading into a recession for lots of different reasons, there is funding available to be able to enact these programs and get this up and running. Even if as we move away from it, as we do away with Prop 209, which I'm praying happens in November, and I'm pretty confident that it's going to. So I'm going to put that out there to the universe. I do believe that that our economic ability to be able to contend with the cost of doing business for modifying this is going to be, the money will be there.
Okay.
One of the things that's important to understand is that if there is an increased recession, one of the things we've discovered is that it will have an even more devastating effect on women businesses and minority businesses, because they have not had the support of governmental contracts and opportunities that are there. And so their businesses are very vulnerable. Even if the economy rebounds, as we're looking at right now, if the economy rebounds because of the pandemic, the businesses that are going to fail and work the hardest are going to be those that are minority and women-owned businesses. They were not the recipients of the PPEs and all that other stuff that people got. We see that those small businesses that were run by women and minorities are suffering. And in the Capitol, we're looking at that because they're the ones that are going to have the difficulty to recover. And so even if there is a recession and a deeper recession, men may suffer, but women and minorities will suffer more than any other group. They've done that all throughout the entire pandemic, and any recession that occurs affects those groups the most.
Oh, sure.
You know, man, I would like to add real quickly to that, Shirley, in the fact that, you know, it's always been an old boys network, right, in this business. And, you know, having worked around contractors, I can tell you they all work for each other, and those that rise to the top serve all their friends below them. And it is a very closed network. And you're right. I think if women themselves coalesce and vote in this particular, they can change this paradigm. And I think that's going to be the key, you know, to making that change, and much needed change, by the way.
Exactly. Is Lorena, is she still muted? Mitch?
I'm unmuted now. Thank you.
I think people want to know if there are organized opposition gathering strength to this proposition. Do you see anything like that happening? And do you have anything else to add on the economic piece of it?
There will be some organized opposition. There is a group, there are some mainly first generation, mainly and not solely Chinese Americans who are fearful that this will prevent opportunity for their children in schools. Now, for the most part, they're pretty supportive of the contracting piece. It's the schools piece, but there are also a number of Asian and Pacific Islander groups who are very supportive of this. So I think it's not a monolithic community when it comes to the issue, and we're going to see that. And the Asian and API community itself is so diverse. You have communities. In fact, I represent a whole lot of Filipinos who benefited under affirmative action tremendously, and will again. They do not have the same. They have not reached the same levels of numbers and schools and things that really reflect their population. We have a lot of Vietnamese and Cambodian Hmong students who will benefit as well. And so it's important to realize people have had different experiences and different opportunities in this country. But we think that this will allow schools to make those decisions to really ensure that there is diversity in the ranks, that they are doing their best to ensure that type of diversity, which is good for everybody.
Right. Thank you.
Let's take about 2 more minutes, and then I'm afraid we're going to need to move on.
Yes, I know we are. Would
Great.
anybody have a pressing question that we haven't touched on? I'm not seeing anything new in here on the things that people have written. So I would be very interested in knowing about a little more follow-up on like transparency about once you have if we do get to have this back in order, have Proposition 16 passed, when we start talking about race again, as Janet Napolitano said, how can you deal with race if you can't talk about race when you're trying to have a representative student body? What kinds of things do you anticipate will arise in terms of transparency and lack of, or will it just be fine?
Well, our hope is that, it's interesting because when we talked about it at the Capitol in terms of looking at with those who are writing the documents and statements, many of the good thing is that many of our campuses have people who were once a part of affirmative action and remember it. And as a result, they are prepared already to begin to implement programs that they know work and to do outreach that was there. And so them, as well as those who did contracting. So fortunately, it's been 24 years, but for most of us, like myself and others who kind of remember all the things that were in place before, when I talk to people, they're getting ready. I talk to some of our agencies at the state level. They're talking about how the things they had in place to do outreach and get people employed at the state level and contracting. And so people are ready for this to happen. And so it's interesting to me because someone said, will it take a lot of effort and a lot of work? No, the mayor of LA is already planning what he's going to do and how he's going to create opportunities in Los Angeles that are fair to basically address these issues of inequality. And so folks are kind of excited about it because the good thing is we have a generation that's still active and basically remember what affirmative action was all about and the good things that it can bring. And we anticipate that it will not take long for folks to get up, get the machines running again and basically begin to do the outreach.
Yeah, that's just a perfect way that pool of people and resources that were there and were so successful 2 decades before 1996. So this is a wonderful way then to look at it. Thank you all so much. This has just been a real eye opener for all of us. And we do appreciate your time. If people have specific questions, you might put them in the chat. I'm sure that our guests will see them. So thank you so much, each and every one of you.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carol, and to all of our excellent speakers. So now we're going to move on to candidate open mic time. Always an important part of our meetings, and even more so in this season. If you're a candidate looking to address the club, leave a message in chat now. And please don't raise your hand, by the way, because that doesn't really work. You'll have about 2 minutes to speak, and I will give you a time check or two as we go, and I'll probably ruthlessly cut people off because, as we have said before at this meeting, I love that mute button. So our first speaker is Sam Hurst. I'm going to unmute you, Sam. And all right, take it.
Very good. Hello, everyone. And thank you for such an outstanding presentation. I wondered how I would get through this evening sitting here and listening, but I was so fully inspired that I am wide awake and raring to go right now. I'm running for Santee City Council District 4, and I'm just overwhelmed by everything that I've heard, and such a challenge to where I live right now, because as was mentioned early in the evening, we've had some very despicable displays of prejudice and racial hatred in this city, and that's something that has inspired me to want to run and to want to make certain that this city now has much more representation than it has, which is minimal at this point. And that's the only way I believe we can change the general climate of Santee and start to work on some of the very important issues of bringing everyone to the table and getting every voice heard in this community. Thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam. Elva Salinas, we're going to hear from you next. Unmute you. And you are ready to unmute yourself.
Okay, good. Excuse me, my throat is hurting, but it's not COVID. So anyway, I'm running for trustee for the Grossmont Union High School District. I'm actually there now. I've been there for 4 years. I'm the only Latina ever to have held that seat, so I'm very proud of that. I'm a retired professor from San Diego City College, and one of the things that I'm very passionate about, and I've done a lot of work on already, is to reduce the expulsion rates for African American students out there. And actually we were down to 0 before COVID hit, as far as like the few months right before COVID. So I'm very proud of that work. And then also the other thing that I'm really excited about is that we did get all of the faculty unionized out there. So that was the other thing that I was really proud of, the work that myself and my partner in crime, Chris Fight, who is also running for office. I don't know if he'll be here tonight. And I've got the endorsement of all the unions at GEA, CSEA, and AFT, and I'm very happy about that. And I want to continue with this work that I'm doing. And I think it's important that I stay there because right now, especially during COVID, we need to protect our employees, our faculty, our staff, and also our students. So I'm trying to hold a hard line, even though I'm one of, well, there's only 2 of us that are liberal on that particular board. So thank you so much for listening to me.
Okay. All right, I think we take a moment here. We have a speaker who's coming in on the phone and wants to say something, has her hand up. I don't know what she wants to say. So go ahead, Michelle.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry. I was hoping that our guests would leave their information in the chat, particularly Rick and Hugh, because those are not people I have a way to get in touch with. And I had further questions. And then for Dr. Weber, I was hoping she would leave information about how people can actually help with making sure that Prop 16 does get passed, because there is a full-on campaign, but I don't have that information to share, but I'm sure Dr. Weber does.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michelle. So let's move that to chat. So speakers and candidates, please leave your message in chat. And let's see, I have lost track of who's supposed to be speaking next. So let me flip back up here. Let's see, we heard from, all right. We heard from Elena last. So that means, I believe Sheryl Robertson is next. So I'm gonna just go up to you here and unmute you. You are unmuted. So
hi, yes. Hi, thank you very much. My name is Cheryl Robertson and I am running for school board in Lemon Grove. The school board in Lemon Grove has been there for quite some time, and it's gotten to the point where most of them are kind of rubber stamping a lot of the stuff that's coming across their desks. They're just not doing enough to uplift the marginalized groups in our district. It's 73, well, pre-COVID, it was 73% socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and 25% are English language learners, with another 13% of kids with IEPs. And so I think we need to, as a district, do a lot more to uplift those groups of students, and that will uplift the district more as a whole. As far as education, I want to focus on growth instead of achievement, because we'll get further that way. And then I really want to restore the community's faith in the district, because the relationship between the district and the community is broken. So my name is Sheryl Robertson. I'm running for school board in Lemon Grove. I'm going to go ahead and put my information in the chat. Please reach out if you have any questions or ideas, or just want to help out. Thanks.
Thank you. I think I've been informed that I believe I have skipped Elena Adams. So we're going to go back to you, Elena.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I am running for re-election to the Grossmont-Cuyamaca School Board. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished in the last 4 years, namely the PLA, Project Labor Agreement, also reauthorizing it, our work in equity. And I just want to mention that I retired from the San Diego Community College District after 35 years. And the majority of time spent there was working with equity. And I'm a huge proponent. And so I think I bring that strength to the Grossmont-Cuyamaca district. We have a new chancellor, and we're very, very pleased with Lynn Nault, who also, as many of you know, has come from San Diego area. We have a great board. One of our, I would say one of the strengths of the board is that there is such a respect and camaraderie and just willingness to work, not for our own agendas, but what we feel is for the best, that will benefit our students the best. So focuses, our equity focuses on the, would be on the project labor agreement. And so thank you for inviting me, and I hope to have the support of the Foothills La Mesa Democrats. I also have the support of the labor unions, the AFT, etc. So thank you very much. And I look forward to meeting you all in person at some point.
Thank you, Elena. All right, next up, we're going to hear from Monica Hinton. Take it, Monica.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me and inviting me. I really enjoyed our previous speakers this evening, so thank you very much. I am running for Cajon Valley School Board Trustee Area 4. And I am very, very new at this. This is my first time running for office for anything. And so I'm extremely new, but I have a PhD in clinical psychology. I'm currently the president of the Association of Black Psychologists. I'm on the board of the San Diego Psychological Association, and I do lots of training on diversity, cultural humility, and equity in the San Diego area and at universities. And so I was trying to figure out how I could give back, and this is what came to mind. So I want to do you all proud, figure out what's happening in the Cajon Valley area and where the needs are. So if any of you have information or suggestions, please let me know. I'll put my email address in the chat, and you can pick it up and let me know your thoughts, as well as I would truly appreciate your support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Monica. And next we're going to hear from Samantha Jenkins. I'm told she would like to speak.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm on behalf of Dr. Lawana Richmond tonight, running for San Diego Unified School District Seat E. And she is running on the platform of improving opportunity, accountability, and excellence for all students throughout the district. She's very focused on equity, and her current priorities for her campaign are restoring learning momentum to help reduce the impact of emergency distance learning initiatives, capturing and realizing unexpected benefits of innovation during the crisis period, and addressing financial shortfalls through strategic engagement with local, state, and federal government and non-governmental agencies. She would really appreciate your vote and your support, both financially and with your time to volunteer with the campaign. If you're interested in additional information, please go to www.drlawanarichmond.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we're looking for other speakers who have not already spoken or been addressed privately in chat. Looks like going once. Oh, Seanilo Rivera. I don't know Sean, but we are going to meet Sean right now. Okay, Sean.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. My name is Sheanilo Rivera. I'm a candidate for San Diego City Council District 9. I'm one of the two general election candidates in this race. Just a really quick little something about me. I'm currently an elected member of the San Diego Community College Board of Trustees. Proud member of that board. I also serve as the executive director of an organization called Youth Will, where I work with young people to create policy change that they believe in. And I am running to make sure that the folks in San Diego have the housing that they need, the climate justice that we need, the actual justice, real justice that our community deserves, and that we have educational and economic opportunity. And we pursue all of that through an explicit and unapologetic pursuit of racial justice and equity. That's the work that I do in the community. It's the work that I do as a trustee. It's the work that I want to do as a council member. And I'm again glad to get a chance to speak to you all tonight, and hope to have a chance to speak to you all more in the run up to the Central Committee endorsement in this race next month. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so next we're going to hear from Doug Case. Doug, I didn't mean to overlook you there. It's not disrespect, it's just me being absent-minded. Go ahead, Doug. Oh, I got to unmute you. That's what I got to do.
There you go. Thank you. I'm Doug Case. I'm the Political Affairs Director for Senate President Pro Tem Tony Atkins. The Senate went back in session last week, and the legislature announced a stimulus plan that would increase unemployment benefits, deter evictions and foreclosures, and streamline the environmental review to speed up new housing projects. The goals of the plan are to fill a critical void left by Congress's failure so far to produce another round of pandemic aid. Details are still being worked out, but the plan would let Californians prepay their income taxes in exchange for future vouchers as a way to quickly collect billions of dollars to spur the economy, borrow federal dollars to continue unemployment benefits, expand the earned income tax credit for low-income workers, expand tax breaks for small businesses, green light road repairs and other infrastructure projects resulting in thousands of new jobs, and finally prioritize California's green economy by funneling money to wildfire mitigation strategies and combating climate change by providing new incentives for electric vehicles and energy efficient buildings. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, thank you, Doug. So now we're gonna, I think we're gonna wrap up. Other board members, message me if there's any that I've missed here. Tina, Chris, Jeff, in particular. I see no messages, so I'm gonna start the wrap-up process. That is all for tonight's meeting. Thank you for staying with us, and we hope to see you soon in real life. Until then, you can look for a replay of the meeting on our YouTube channel. Just search for the Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club on YouTube and subscribe while you're there. Also look for links to the video on our website, Facebook page, and Twitter account, or in our email update tomorrow. The website is Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club.com, or if that's too much for you to type, LMFDems.com. The Facebook page is also the name of the club. On Twitter, we're LMFDems. And if you want to sign up for our email updates, go to the website and look for the Get Email Updates link on the top of the page. Thank you to Jeff Benish, our VP of Programming, for lining up this excellent roster of guests. Thank you to all of our guests. And also thanks to board members Evelyn Andrade and Katie Seghetti, who helped run the meeting, and to the entire board, and once again to our guests and candidates, and to all of you for staying with us and joining us. Good night, everyone. Stay healthy, stay sane, and vote blue no matter who. And also run for office. Go to sddemocrats.org/candidates.
Thank you, Mitch. Thank you.